Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and we have some great news. Another promising July Nintendo Direct rumor has popped up here. A lot of people have been losing hope in a big summer Nintendo Direct. I think it makes a lot of sense for there to still be a big summer Nintendo Direct. And now we have a new rumor coming from a place that I believe is credible, that is suggesting that we are going to have a Direct presentation in July. So that's what we're going to be diving into this time for this bonus video of the day. But before going forward, let me point out, I am aiming for a goal of 60,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So when I say another promising Nintendo Direct rumor, we actually had one a few days ago from Beat-em-Ups during his Nintendo podcast, where he said, from a source that he cannot specify, but he sort of suggested that it's a very credible one, that he heard that there would be a Nintendo Direct in July with some very interesting things like a teaser for Animal Crossing, a release date for Metroid Prime 4, and other little bits and details that if you're more curious on, you can check that prior video on. But last night, it looks like we got another rumor, and it actually showed up, at least to me, initially, on my own live stream last night. So going here, you see here that friend of the channel Attack the Backlog left a comment here, and he said, "Good to see you, bro. I can say I was told by someone I trust 100% they were shown photo evidence of a July Direct and said there's a September 1 too." So, yeah, Attack the Backlog is a fellow YouTuber, covers Nintendo content. I'll have his channel linked in the description below. We've actually been talking about Attack the Backlog a fair bit lately because he conducted an interview or like a discussionary podcast with Nash Weedle about a couple weeks ago, and there was a lot of interesting nuggets in that discussion that we've gone back to a few different times, and Nash Weedle, as we've also discussed a lot lately, has been continually getting a variety of things right about Nintendo Switch 2, and I think at this point most people who've been following on what Nash Weedle's been talking about seem to be in agreement that it looks like Nash Weedle does have some pretty good sources on what is going on with Nintendo. And so my initial thought when I saw this chat here from Attack the Backlog is that he heard something from Nash Weedle personally. But I actually reached out to him and he told me it's something else altogether different, and I can't clarify on the source, but what I can say is that according to Attack the Backlog, he has heard from this source before. They have been right about Nintendo Directs before, and he had heard about this before people had given up on this idea of a June Direct. So July was kind of the thinking, at least according to this source here, that he trusts 100%. And also interestingly, this would suggest that timing-wise, this would be before the Beat-em-Ups rumor or leak of a Nintendo Direct in July. So for those who don't want to trust Beat-em-Ups, we have someone else here who's saying that they have also heard a Nintendo Direct would be in July. And apparently it was even mentioned there was photo evidence. Now, I myself personally can't vouch for this photo evidence, but I will say I absolutely trust Attack the Backlog. He is someone I know personally, so I definitely think that there is something to this. And also going back to the Beat-em-Ups rumor about a Direct in July, a lot of people don't really see much reason to disbelieve him either. Now, that doesn't mean that 100% for certain there's going to be a Direct in July, because one, maybe they got incorrect information, it is certainly possible, and also plans change. So it's possible at one point there was a plan for a July Direct, but plans could change. And maybe some people would be believing that because you look at what's happened lately. Just yesterday, Nintendo announced that Dragon Drive is coming out August 14th. So that's kind of like big news from Nintendo this week, and then last week we had the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, and the week before that, we had the Splatoon Raiders plus Splatoon 3 10.0 update news. So the last 3 weeks we've gotten fairly significant Nintendo news, which is leading people to believe that there's not much reason to have a Nintendo Direct anymore for this summer. And as I've talked about already, I don't think this is much reason to disbelieve in a summer Nintendo Direct. If anything, I think it suggests otherwise. Because with Splatoon Raiders, there is no release date on that game. We do not know when it's coming out, so if it's coming out this year or next year, guess what? They should probably tell us about a release date fairly soon. The Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, that's more so just about focusing on Bonanza. I don't think it comes with any sort of implication on what's going on with a more general Direct presentation. And then with Dragon Drive, that game has been expected to be coming out in August for some time already, and it's just a digital-only title priced at $20. This is a small thing, It's not meant to be a big feature focus of a huge Nintendo Direct presentation, at least not outside of the one announcement it had from the big Switch 2 Direct in April. And so if it's coming out in August, they would be needing to give us a release date right about now. And so if there's a Direct happening in July, they might be getting too close to the actual release date to announce that release date. They usually like to have a little bit more of space between the announcement of the release date and when it's actually coming out. Not to mention, given that this is a smaller title, there could be a variety of other announcements that could very easily overshadow Dragon Drive. And it does seem like we are actually pretty much about due for a Metroid Prime 4 Beyond news update here, because we recently actually have gotten a rating for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which suggests that it's a lot closer to coming out now than what it was a few months ago when it didn't have a rating going into the initial Switch 2 Direct, which has also been rumored by beat-em-ups that we're supposed to be getting a release date for Prime 4 in this July Direct presentation. And then of course there are other games we need to get news on, like Kirby Air Riders, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. And personally, I still think Nintendo has something else left to come out this year that might actually be a pretty substantial release. And that's just from the first party side of things. There's also a variety of third party things that should be announced. We still don't have a release date for Tarnished Edition of Elden Ring or Final Fantasy VII Remake. And we went through Summer Games Fest without any sort of major third party announcement for the Switch 2. There's gotta be a whole bevy of them. They're likely waiting for a big Nintendo Direct presentation. The way I see it, worst case scenario, we are looking at a partner Direct for this summer. And that's a worst case scenario in my opinion, because there is a need to have a significant amount of announcements regarding games coming to Switch 2, at least from the third party side of things. Yeah, I could potentially see Nintendo just dropping some trailers for a few more games over these next few months, which would tide us over until September. Like, that is a possibility, although I don't think it's a likely possibility because this is the launch year of Switch 2. This isn't the time to hold back on Direct presentations, but rather focus even more so on it. A point I made during last night's live stream, when you take a look at the year of 2017, right? Back in 2017, there were so many presentations for Nintendo the launch year of Switch 1. As you see here, we had 5 game-specific Nintendo Directs. Not all of them were for Switch 1, but still there was a few. And we had a Nintendo Direct in April, we had a Nintendo Direct in September, but this page doesn't even show us the big E3 spotlight, effectively the June Nintendo Direct for 2017, and also the huge January conference, which is basically like that first major presentation, a giant Direct for Switch 1 at the beginning of the year. So they had 4 general presentations and 5 game-specific Directs in the year of 2017. We should be expecting something similar, in my opinion, for Switch 2 this year. And since I'm here, I'll also point out, this April Direct, the first general Direct of 2017, came out about 5 weeks after the launch of Switch 1, and so looking at the launch of Switch 2, June 5th, about 4 to 5 weeks later would put us in, when? July. So Nintendo might have a somewhat similar pattern going on here. There are going to be people out there that are going to argue that this is cope or what have you, and I personally don't really agree with that at all. I think, to the contrary, this is reality, or rather the more realistic situation. You look at the history of summers from Nintendo, there are almost always some kind of big summer general Direct presentations. At the very least a partner showcase, but I'm thinking definitely more given this is launch year Switch 2, and there's still a variety of first-party things we need to learn about here. And now we have a couple rumors to support this idea that there still needs to be a Summer Direct. It may not be happening in the second half of June as it has happened over the last few years, but if it happens in the first half of July, that still falls overall within my personal expectations for when a Direct would have happened during this period of the year. So my confidence in a summer, or I guess I should say a July Nintendo Direct, has only grown. Really all we've learned this week is that the Direct presentation is probably not happening in June, but given the leak we had from this prior weekend, or the rumor from beat-em-ups, if you were to believe that rumor, July has already been seeming like the more likely scenario, and now we have this other rumor that apparently was suggesting this even before beat-em-ups put out that info. So I'm getting pretty excited for the second major Nintendo Direct presentation for Switch 2, but you know, there is one other consideration I want to point out here. Has anyone else noticed that there hasn't been any major Switch 1 releases lately? The last one was Xenoblade Chronicles X in March. There was no release for Switch 1 in April, May, Nothing in June for Switch 1, July not so much either, and from what we know, not even in August as well. And I think this is worth noting because we can look at things from a Switch 2 perspective, and clearly I think there's need for a Nintendo Direct, but what about the Switch 1 perspective? Outside of Metroid Prime 4 and Pokemon Legends ZA, is there anything else for Switch 1 coming out this year? Some announcements like that should be coming fairly soon, and maybe this next Nintendo Direct is not going to be just a Switch 2 focused Direct, but just a Nintendo Direct overall, including announcements for Switch 1 and Switch 2, perhaps very similar to that follow-up Nintendo Direct back in April of 2017, the first Nintendo Direct after the launch of Switch 1, where it was a combined Direct of 3DS and Switch 1. So maybe this time, it'll be about Switch 1 and Switch 2, and we'll get some clarity on a little bit more things coming out for Switch 1 this year. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.